yes, you get a bit of a lull here, and then it turns back up, and this is World War III.
It turns back up in August. Was that like the?
Yeah, pretty much, and then 2 months ahead that looked to be kind of the worst this year, at least, is August and November. On our war models, it's got a panic cycle for 2026.
You're watching CapitalCosm. My name is Danny. It is June 23rd, 2025, and my guest today is the founder of Armstrong Economics. It is the one and only, the legend himself, Martin Armstrong. Martin, thank you so much for coming back on, my friend.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to see you, Danny.
Yeah, likewise. And we certainly have a lot to talk about, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Obviously, the big story is the Iran, Israel, and now U.S. conflict. We have officially entered the conflict by striking 3 separate nuclear facilities. There's conflicting reports regarding the damage of these facilities. The Iranians are downplaying it. The Americans and the Israelis are saying it's mission accomplished. So it's we're in the, what is it called? The fog of war. So walk us through what we just witnessed over the course of the last 48 hours and what we can expect as we march on ahead.
Well, as you know, I was basically kind of pro-Trump because he was anti-war. I knew Camilla was in the palm of the hands of the neocons. And, I had even spoken to RFK and said, you're not going to win, basically, as an independent. And I knew he was anti-war, so I was kind of like behind that. But, the problem is that, Trump did get rid of a lot of the neocons, like John Bolton, Victoria Nuland, etc. But they're well entrenched in the intelligence community. And is on top of that, they just moved to Paris and London, and they have all the European leaders eating out of their hand. And then on top of that, they used Netanyahu to come in and get and talk him into this. Netanyahu actually went to school in Philadelphia, and he hung out with Bill Kristol and his family. It was his father, Irving Kristol, who started the whole neocon movement. So I knew Netanyahu was a die-hard neocon. That's it. And I think
Marty,
Trump,
you went out for like 10 seconds. Can you, if you don't mind rewinding back, 10, 15 seconds?
Yeah, I think that, they brought in, Netanyahu, who is a die-in-the-wool neocon. He went to school in Philadelphia, hung out with Bill Kristol and his family. And was Bill Kristol's father, Irving, who created the whole neocon movement. So, I grew up in that area, so I had intimate knowledge of what transpired way back then. But they brought Netanyahu in, and I think basically he convinced Trump, along with the intelligence community, that if he just attacked Iran, it would be all over, end the war. That's it. So I don't think he realized that he is crossing the Rubicon here. And he probably thought that this is it. One shot, that's all. I had been to dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago back in March of 2020. And that's when he had said that he wanted to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, but it was for the reason he was tired of writing letters to their parents that your son died for God and country. And he said, what are we doing there? They've been fighting over borders for 1,000 years. What difference are we going to make? So I knew where his heart was. And he was the first head of state that ever even remotely referred to people who died on the battlefield. Everybody else, it's like a football game. Well, there's collateral damage. We know that. We just have to win. They never think about the consequences to families or anything else. So I was very disappointed when Trump did this. I understand he probably thinks one shot, it was over. It's not. What the neocons do, they've never won a war yet. Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, we're there for 20 some years. I mean, Iraq. I mean, you just go down the list. And, Iraq, they were going to go in, we're going to take that out in 3 weeks, and then we're going to move to Tehran and take out basically 7 countries. I mean, even General Wesley Clark has come out and confirmed that as well. I was told that by Bill Kristol back in the 90s, that if they took out Saddam Hussein, Assad out of Syria, and Gaddafi, it will bring peace to the Middle East. Oh, democracy. I said, you're out of your mind. This is what the neocons do. They basically, they judge other people by themselves. And you can't do that. Everybody responds according to what they believe. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Doesn't matter. So you have, to me, these neocons, they're no different than terrorists. They both believe in whatever it is that they're fighting for. Okay. I mean, methods or whatever may differ, or the end goal differs, but they're both entrenchable from their ideas. You've just, disturbed the hornet's nest. And I did a piece on the blog this morning about Khomeini. And look, he was a dissident against the Shah, thrown in prison, tortured. You expect this guy to say, oh, gee, I'm afraid of dying, so I'll back off? Come on. I mean, if, it doesn't work that way. And, even Sun Tzu basically said, if you don't know your enemy, you can't win. It's, I mean, my father was with General Patton from North Africa all the way up to Berlin. And Patton defeated Rommel. Rommel had written a book on tactical warfare of tanks. He read the book. He defeated Rommel, and he said, I read your book. All right, it's not what you think. I mean, my father used to teach me this all the time. It's not what you think, it's what somebody else thinks. And they will respond according to what they believe. So
right.
In Islam, it's divided between Shiite and Sunni. It's like, Christianity, Protestant versus Catholic. All right. That's not solvable. All right. You go to England, the Civil War was 1649. They still call Catholics papes. Ireland is still divided, North versus South. All right. I've been in Berlin, in Bavaria, and they said, "Oh, tomorrow's a holiday." And I said, "What's the holiday?" "Oh, we won the war." I said, "Which war are we talking about?" And it was, the war against Prussia. Protestant, Bavaria's Catholic. So, I mean, these things have been going on for hundreds of years. And this is the difference between Shia and Sunni. This is not like a border dispute. All right, I'll give you this land, you give me that, and then we'll come to a reasonable. You can't do that. Okay, this is not the same kind of thing. And stepping into this is very dangerous. I mean, Homeland Security has now come out and said, be on guard for, sleeper cell terrorism inside the United States. All right, the same thing in Europe. There's a risk of major civil and war, unrest taking place in a lot of the major cities of Europe now. I mean, this is a religious issue.
But haven't the Sunni countries peace agreements as well with Iran, notably Saudi Arabia, as well as Iran, and Turkey has come out today in verbal support, at least, with their partners in Iran?
Yes. Look, what you have to realize is that there is anywhere, depending upon the various country, but 30 to even 40, 50% Shia in Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's not, they're not all Sunni. All right. So there's risks there in those countries that if their Sunni government doesn't basically kind of support Islam, then are they traitors? Then you can get civil unrest there. The Sunnis, UAE, etc. I mean, they're more practical. They're looking at it from an economic standpoint, whereas Shia basically is that the church should run the state. Sunni, you have kings. Okay, so that's why Saudi Arabia, etc., we're always kind of like enemies of Iran, because Iran would think that their governments are illegal. So you're stepping into a real mess that is more religious than anything else, and that's what I've been very concerned about. Is that stepping into this, you can create civil unrest that spreads into U.S. and Europe. The great Satan and the little Satan being Israel. You're not going to change their mind. Oh, we'll hit them with a few bombs. It only makes them even more pissed off.
So do we see the Strait of Hormuz getting closed anytime soon? I mean, they did vote on it in their parliament. Iran did. Do we see that materialize? And it appears that they've qualified it by saying that Western ships. Now, what qualifies as a Western ship? Most likely European and American ships, but would that also include Gulf ships? Do they view the Gulf states as being part of the West? What do you think is the likelihood that they actually follow through with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and what are some of the downstream effects that we should look out for?
Well, yeah, some people said, "Oh, well, if they did that, they'd be cutting off their own nose." Sorry, not true. Apparently, the press is not reported. We've all heard that China is rebuilding the Silk Road. Okay. Since about 2016, I think it was, they completed a railroad from China to Iran. Iran basically sells 80% of its oil to China. All right. So, in theory, they could shut the Straits of Hormuz, no problem. All right. It wouldn't affect them. It would affect everybody else. UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc. I'm not entirely sure they're ready for that, because that would be more war against the other Sunni states. Uh, but the neocons, they never consider the consequences of their actions. All they can't see beyond the end of their nose. Like they took out Saddam Hussein. Fine. Oh, we got to get him. What comes afterwards? No plan, no idea. You have Tony Blair. His apology is on YouTube. Listen to it. He says, well, we thought we were freeing the people from the tyranny of Saddam Hussein. We didn't realize that we would be then subjecting them to more sectarian violence. Granted, Saddam Hussein was a dictator, Assad, and Gaddafi. Fine. But at the same time, you needed them. They kept all the different factions from killing each other. Once you removed him, what did you get? You got all kinds of sectarian violence, ISIS, chopping off people's heads and stuff. Sometimes you need a strong man when the hatred between them is just so much.
Especially in the Middle East, where there's a ton of tribalism. You do
Yes.
need a strong man in the Middle East to reel everyone in.
This was I've been there. You have to understand that, Syria, they don't see themselves as Syrian. They see themselves as Sunni, Shiite, and Kurd. All right. That comes first, to a large extent, that's why a lot of the people that came to the United States were isolationists. You can look up, and the danger here is when you go into an economic decline. That took place after the Panic of 1837. All right, that's when Andrew Jackson shut down the bank, Bank of the United States and all that stuff. All right. Once you killed the central bank, all these individual banks started printing their own money. You didn't know what was real, what wasn't real. There were brokers in New York. Somebody would print up a stack of bills. They would sell them to them at a discount, and they would put them into circulation. It's real fraud. All right. So that led to what is called as the broken banknote period. All these banks started failing. States then tried borrowing money to bail out the banks. Then the states defaulted, Pennsylvania, a number of them, Louisiana. So now you had a sovereign default at the state level. Simultaneously, you can look at 1844, Philadelphia. Irish were coming in, and the potato famine, etc. All right, you were bringing in migrants during an economic decline. Not good. What happens is, they'll work for less money just to get a job. All right, so then you had gun battles, literally gun battles on the streets of Philadelphia in 1844. Native movement versus the migrants. All right, so these issues of migration have, there's a lot more to it. You're seeing this in Europe. All right, and to get in, why did most of the Indian community in Britain vote for Brexit? Because they had to learn a language, they had to have a skill to get in. All of a sudden, you're just letting all these people in that couldn't even say anything. And I'm supposed to hire somebody that can only say, answer the phone. Oh, que pasa? That's it. If you don't have the skills to even get a job, then they're on welfare. That's what's going on in California. You got Newsom out there completely nuts, saying, "Oh, these are taxpayers." How? I'm an employer. I have a lot of employees. I have to have a file on everyone. They have to have a social security card. We have to take out taxes. We get audited, sometimes even once a year. Are we, the big thing now is, are you hiring contract employees, so that you don't have to match your social security? They come in to check that now. All right. So how are these people taxpayers? I'd like to know that. It's just propaganda. All they can possibly do is get welfare from the state. That's it. They can't get a job. So you have a declining, our computers warning of a declining economic recession into 2028. Europe is probably going to be more of a depression, and the United States.
Starting in 2028 or from now?
No, that's the end. It started last year.
Okay.
So, we got everything that's going against us at this point. Trump steps into this Iranian mess. Granted, he probably thought one time it's finished. They won't come back. Really. You just had the ambassador hop on a plane and just landed in Moscow this morning. You have the words
of Iran.
Yeah, I mean, you have the words of both Russia and China at the UN Security Council. And what did they say? Unprovoked, illegal, violation of international law. Everything they said is actually true. And so
they will most likely break with Iran. Iran is the third pillar in the Russo-Cino-Iranian alliance. So I'm willing to bet that they understand it, that if Iran goes down, I mean, they're next, because the empire would have to, I believe the strategy is to knock out each one separately as opposed to fighting them all head on at the same time, which is why you're kind of seeing like this move right now to, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this move to stabilize things with Russia. So, we can kind of put it on the shelf here while we deal with Iran now, potentially China afterwards, and then Russia will be free game at that point.
Yeah, look, China's not stupid. They know that the war is not Ukraine. It's NATO against Russia. You had even Boris Johnson. I mean, the diehard neocon publicly said and made the front pages of the newspapers, even in Scandinavia, we are at war, a proxy war with Russia. He declared that publicly. Britain is at war with Russia.
And to kind of bring it back to the Iran war, there is a connective tissue that connects Iran with the Ukraine war, and that is Iran borders the Caspian Sea, which also borders Russia. So if you look at a map, the Caspian Sea is the northwest piece of it is Russian territory. So if Iran becomes a NATO vassal state, now all of a sudden Russia now has to worry about that front on their border as well.
Oh yeah, look, I mean, that's what the Romanian election interference was all about. NATO is building the largest base in Europe in Romania, and it is to attack Russia. This is why the most popular president knew that. He ran for and then, the government says, oh, he's under investigation, so he can't assume the presidency after winning. Then the second election, they've interfered again. And I spoke to people there, and I know that, even Macron was running over there. Free speech elections mean nothing in Europe, zero. And they win at all costs, period. You have one of the EU ministers come out and even said, well, if we would step in the German elections as we did in Romania. He publicly said that to make sure the AfD doesn't win in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Mark Twain said if voting really mattered, they wouldn't let us do it. This is what Europe is doing. It's our way, nobody else's way. We're going to pretend that we're elected. I mean, Ursula's never been elected to be even a dog catcher. All right.
Mm-hmm.
How does she get to be the head of Europe? She's appointed. All right, by others. There's no election process for any of the people to make the laws in the commission. Zero.
But isn't that model falling apart now? I mean, haven't we seen enough populist revolt, let's call it, within the past several years now? That model is persona non grata. I mean, there was an original plan to push that model worldwide, North American Union, African Union, but now, I mean, it's nowhere near ready for prime time. It's actually being rejected on the home front of Europe. So the globalists in Europe seem to have, taken a back seat here. I want to get your thoughts really quick on the markets, though, because the markets seem to be shrugging off some of these developments. Oil is down to $73. The markets are up, I believe, just ever so slightly, but you would expect more volatility happening in this case from what we're seeing. Why do you think that is?
Because they think this is one shot and it's over with. I think it's the culmination. It's the end, and everything will get back to nice and peace and hunky-dory. And look, our computer is showing, yes, you should see gold back down to retest maybe the 3,000 level, and probably into next week. If it goes beyond next week, it could go into maybe like the week of 3 weeks into July. But computers basically showing, holy hell starts breaking loose again in August.
What breaks loose in August?
Pretty much everything. It's just,
like the markets or like a war?
Wars and civil unrest and things of this nature. Like you were saying in Europe, all right, that was the model. All right, they pulled it off in Canada with Carney. All right, and he's been told to increase spending for NATO by 5% and to prepare for drafts. I had a friend who was at the Vienna Peace Conference a couple months ago, and then he called me. He says, "This has got nothing to do with peace anymore. Everybody's talking about starting drafts and preparing for war." So this is what they need because of what you said. They know the globalists are losing. AfD in Germany, they're a bunch of Nazis. They wanted to ban the party. Now it's number one. Portugal, same thing. Poland, Nigel Farage in Britain. Reform is now, beat the conservatives. So there is a backlash. They see this coming. And the only way to do this, to deal with it, is war. They need an external enemy. Even if you look at Israel, there was a no confidence vote against Netanyahu day before the attack. He won only by 2 votes. I saw his polls before among the people, it was down to 29%. So this attack that he pulled off was necessary because otherwise he's removed and the neocons lose their position. All right. So the fact that there was this no confidence vote the day before and he only won by 2 votes,
right,
it was like, we got to go, and we got to go now. Otherwise, I'm replaced, and whoever comes after me, you're going to have to start all over again. So that's what I mean. When a government is threatened, and as we see in Europe, all right, with all the right starting to rise up, they know their time is coming to an end. So then they get more authoritarian, as Vance was talking at the Munich conference: free speech, you're shutting it down. And they do this to retain power. They need that external enemy. And that's when they're most dangerous, because Europe, I am concerned that they would deliberately try to create some sort of false flag to blame Putin. They see he's attacked NATO. That's it. Article 5, we all go in. Putin is probably the smartest guy on the table right now. Look at all the red lines he has put down. You give them long range missiles. That's it. We do. Every line he has set, Europe has deliberately broken. All right, deliberately. Why? Because they keep trying to get him to attack anything in NATO so they can say, see, he started the war, not me.
He's not falling for the trap.
He's not. He understands what's going on. And that's why he's come out and, is this really what you want? Nuclear war? People, he's threatened with nuclear war. No, he's trying to warn you, stupid. Is this how far you're going? He doesn't want to go to war. I mean, if he did, he wants to take Europe. What does Europe have? Nothing. All right. If you look at the history of war, even go to World War II. Why did Japan invade Manchuria? Because we cut off their energy, we've confiscated all their assets, etc. Right? They have no energy. All right. They had to go into Manchuria to get the natural resources. All right. Europe has nothing. All right. This is why Hitler, Napoleon, they all tried to conquer Russia, because Russia is the richest country in the world from a natural resource perspective. Sweden, they all tried, that made Peter the Great, to save Russia. They have something worthwhile going after. Russia had the world's largest gold reserves in 1917. And I've said this before, somebody hid them. Nobody knows where they are. Rumors are they buried them in some sort of forest or dropped them to the bottom of a very deep lake. Nobody knows. It's like the Knights Templar treasure, but it was the world's largest gold reserves. Nobody knows where the hell it is. So this is why Napoleon, Hitler, everybody has wanted Russia. Russia hasn't invaded Europe because they don't have anything. Okay, I mean, they go ahead and invade Europe. What are the French going to say? Oh, okay, thank you. Are you going to pay our pensions now?
Yeah, it's their biggest blessing, the natural resource hub that they have underneath their feet, but it's acted as a curse as well. It's made them a target.
Yeah, it's and this is the same thing with the Middle East. They got the oil. If they didn't have oil and it was just a bunch of sand, nobody would care. Like Africa, all right, they wouldn't care. There's got to be some sort of economic benefit. If you just study the history of war, I mean, Alexander the Great went off conquering these different. The troops shared in the spoils. He couldn't say, "Okay, we're going to go conquer this country. What are we going to get out of it?" Well, nothing. Really, you're on your own. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah.
I mean, he made a ton of money. That was the Hellenistic period. Conquered everything, Egypt, Babylon, whatever. When he went to India, that's when the troops were starting to revolt against them, and he had to pull back. But there's got to be a profit, and there's just no profit here. And the only reason Russia would go into Europe is to shut them the hell up. That's about it. You're not going to get anything out of it. All you're going to get is a bunch of headaches, and you certainly don't want to occupy. All you're going to get is protests and civil unrest, etc. I mean, it's not a very good model.
I think that's the starkest contrast between the Western elites and the global South, let's call them, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, and so forth, is that when you look at the Western elites, they appear to be from a strata above the people. Whereas when you look at Xi Jinping or Putin and the leadership in Iran as well, they view them as of the people. Whereas here in America and in Europe, our elites kind of look down on us. They call us deplorables. They call us every name under the sun. So that's the difference, is that there is no they care not for the stakeholders of the country. They only care for their strata.
Well, like I said, I know some of these people. I've been to dinner. In my younger years, I was more, I thought we really cared about the country, the economy, and stuff. And I realized this is all a bunch of bullshit. It's even getting called in. It's like, oh, gee, thank you for coming. How do we save the world? Oh, sorry, your 15 minutes is up. Next, and then they always stand up and say whatever hell it is that they wanted to do in the first place. They don't listen to us. They really don't. And they view us as basically the dirt beneath their feet. The neocons. I mean, you look at Blinken, all right? Secretary of State, real nasty neocon, put sanctions on Russia. It's always the same strategy. We'll hurt them. We'll cut off his energy sales, so the country will fall with no money. All right. What did you just do? You created BRICS. Once you took them out of SWIFT, China goes, oh, and he even threatened China. If you help Russia, we'll do the same to you. Hello, do you understand how the world economy even functions? All right. So you've now split the world economy in half. You've created BRICS because you use the dollar as a weapon. They don't care about the economy. They don't care about the people. They don't care about the country. It's I have to win. And this is my objective, period. And I've seen it firsthand. I was in D.C. when, back, in the 80s when Reagan was there and Gorbachev, and you had came to power, and his speech basically showed that communism was ending. All right. And Reagan wanted to go meet him. And I can tell you that the neocons couldn't say that he was no longer, he was a communist. Now they said, oh, you can never trust a Russian. Out of their playbook, what do? Just look at Europe. The first thing they do is they say, never talk to the enemy. Why? Because you might come up with a peace deal. All right. So every leader in Europe would not talk to Putin. Trump was the first one, and they were pissed off at that. And then you heard Kalis, etc. The former PM of Estonia. Whatever he does, we won't recognize it. We don't care what he talks to this is such, you cannot have peace if
Mhm.
you do not even communicate.
So what are we to make from all of these? We've been to kind of take it back to the Iran theater because that is the pressing topic right now. The market seems to be shrugging it off.
Hmm.
The money in there doesn't seem to be believing it. But what, from your computer modeling, Marty, how do you see this play out? Is this really a one and done, or are we going to anticipate more tit for tat? I'm reading reports from Reuters that say, it's Reuters, take it for what you will, but they're saying retaliation from Iran is expected to come within the next 48 hours. Again, who knows if that's true? It's all fog of war. We've seen negotiations ongoing for the last month or two between the United States and Iran, and now it turns out that those were just a smokescreen to lull them into a false sense of security. The 2-week deadline from a week ago that Trump was saying, that's now come out that was another tactic to buy time and strike them while they're off guard. How do you see this play out? Because there's a lot of subterfuge, there's a lot of deception, as you would expect in warfare. From your vantage point, from your computer modeling, where do we go to next?
Well, the computer basically has shown that this was just the start of it. It's the beginning. It's not the
Mm.
end. Um, and this is going to get much worse going into 2027, but I would expect it from August on. And I have to stress, this is not my personal opinion. We all have opinions. And if it was my personal opinion, I got a 50-50 shot of being wrong. All right. Um, what I'm relaying is what the computer's showing, and the computer's been damn good at everything.
Mm.
I mean, it forecast the collapse of Russia. I mean, it hasn't missed a beat yet. I stood up at our 2011 conference and said, "All right, fine. 2014 is that's when the war cycle turns up." It was and even I said, the computer's projecting Ukraine a year in advance. All right, spot on. Um, this is not, I'm not clairvoyant or anything. I mean, so it's not my personal opinion. Um, when I developed this computer, I didn't anticipate that it would do this.
Mm.
I was just trying basically as an international hedge fund manager to track the capital flows, etc. And as I've said, the first time I encountered this is when we had a client, a major bank in Lebanon, and they asked us if we could create a model. They found a ledger. Somebody had written down the price of the pound back into the 19th century. I said, sure. We put it in, and the computer came out and said, your country's going to fall apart in 8 days. I thought
Mm.
there was something, I called him. I said, look, there's got to be something wrong with this data. It says your country's going to fall apart in 8 days. And he very calmly asked, he says, well, what currency does it recommend? I said, the Swiss franc. 8 days later, exactly on target, the Civil War began.
Right. So what's it forecasting now?
It's forecasting that, yes, you get a bit of a lull here, and then it turns back up. And this is World War III.
It turns back up in August. Was that like the?
Yeah, pretty much. And then 2 months ahead that look to be kind of the worst this year, at least, is August and November. On our war models, it's got a panic cycle for 2026, which is the first one I've seen in like 40 years on that model. So how, look, both China and Russia know about the neocons at this point. And they know that their objective is the same as that they accuse them, world domination. like I said, when I spoke with Bill Crystal, oh, if we take out these dictators in the Middle East, we'll bring peace. I said, you're out of your mind. All right. This is this one world government nonsense. I have a clip on my site of the former French President Holland standing in Parliament alongside Merkel, saying the whole reason for creating the EU is one government in Europe will stop, prevent war.
Mm.
And this theory is completely nuts. I've
Are
said, just look at the Roman Empire, one government. How many civil wars did they have?
Are the globalists one and the same with the neocons, or is there
Pretty
different?
much, yeah.
Okay.
A little different in the sense that, but the neocons, unfortunately, got their tenants in pretty much their tentacles into the Biden administration. Look at it this way: you had Garland, who brought all the criminal charges against Trump to try and stop him. You had Victoria Nuland, who was over there handing out sandwiches in 2014 for Maidan. All right. And you had Blinken, who divided the world economy, removed Russia from SWIFT and created BRICS. All three claim that their families were Jewish. All three from Ukraine. All three said Russia persecuted their families. I have a lot of Jewish friends. I don't know any of them that came from Ukraine. How do you get three from Ukraine in the same administration? I mean, something's wrong. It's that's not coincidence. And all three with a personal grudge against Russia.
Yeah, it's definitely one.
There's something wrong. It just doesn't smell right. I don't care if they're Jewish or if they're whatever they are. If they were just outright Ukrainian, it doesn't matter.
They all came with a bone to pick with Russia. That's the common denominator.
That's the real issue. And it's not whether they're ethnic or religion or anything of that nature. It's just that all three from the same area. Look, Zelensky, I also have tapes on my site, all right, of him as a comedian before president, making jokes about how they confiscate money from Russians and Jews. All right, he's like Soros. Soros pretended to be Christian, all right, to hide from the Nazis.
They're amoral.
Zelensky's the same. All right. He was one of the neocons. All right. Only after becoming president. Oh, I'm Jewish. Why? Because they were also persecuting Jews. So he can say, oh, obviously I couldn't have been a neocon. Not true. Just not true. He just pulled the Soros. That's all. And he married a Christian girl, and his children are baptized. And friends of mine in Israel say he's no Jew. So I mean, it's just you get it from every which angle. It's
definitely. Well, I think we're running up on.
Nobody's what you think they are. I think
that is true. That is true. That's the entire premise of the red pill that's gone viral nowadays. It's that we witness a surface level reality, but once you look beneath the veneer of it, there's all sorts of there's the underbelly of the true reality that creates, the after effects of what we see on the surface. So, Martin, it's always a pleasure having you on, my friend. I think we've covered pretty much everything I had in store for us. But if there's anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap up here, the floor is yours. Otherwise, we can, we can sign off.
I think it's going to be very interesting from here on out. I would just say that look at Churchill's quote. He said, in times of war, truth is very precious. It needs a bodyguard of lies to protect it.
Very true. All right. Well, on that note, where can people find you, Martin?
ArmstrongEconomics.com. It's completely open. You don't have to put any emails, and we don't send out 50 emails to you. Too busy for that. We're not trying to sell you swampland in Florida.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, lots of stuff that we got into. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you agreed with Marty, type go, Marty, go in the comments section. If you disagreed with anything, that's fine too. But let me know what you disagreed on. I'm always interested in hearing your thoughts. I do, in fact, read the comments. Also, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you guys think. It really does go a long way in pushing this video up and this channel in the algorithm so this message can get out to as many people as possible. If you'd like to support us as well on Substack, the link is CapitalCosm.substack.com. You see it right there beneath my name tag, as well as on the description and pinned comment of this video. You get a chance to ask questions to any of my upcoming guests, recommend me future guests, and get all my videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. So with all that said, thank you guys for watching. I will catch you later. Bye, y'all.